Okay, so the previous lesson was on adjectives, and next we're going to talk about the order of adjectives. So, when more than one adjective is used to modify a noun, the adjectives must be listed in order. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but numbers come first, followed by opinion, size, age, and color. So if you are using many adjectives to describe a noun, that's the order they would go in. So it'd be numbers, then opinion, then size, then age, and then color. Commas often separate two or more adjectives that describe the same noun. A comma does not normally follow a number in a description, however. So if you are using many adjectives to describe a noun, you're going to put commas, just like you would with any other list, except normally you don't usually put a comma after a number, but you can. So these instructions say, read each sentence, then include the adjectives in parentheses and rewrite the sentence on the line provided. On the Google form, it'll look a little bit different. I'll have the prompt and then you'll just type it into the Google form. So the first sentence says, a truck drove down the road. And the two adjectives we need to use to rewrite the sentence are red and big. So red is a color, big is a size. So if we look up here, first we say the size, and then color would come. So we wouldn't do color and then size. It would be size, then color. So I'm assuming we're describing the truck, not the road. So you would say, a big red truck drove down the road. Notice that it sounds a little awkward if you said, a red big truck drove down the road. Usually when you're talking, you may not have noticed, but you will most likely on your own, without even thinking you're doing it, put size before color. So you would say automatically a big red truck instead of a red big truck drove down the road. So let me see if I can, there we go, type. Okay. So for number one, I would put, let's try that again. Get it in the right spot. Okay, that's better. A big, comma, red truck drove down the road. So that's how you would write it correctly. Number two, we have the driver wore a hat. And then we've got three adjectives: blue, silly, and old. So blue is a color. Silly, you could say, is an opinion, right? You describe something as silly. Somebody could say something was silly. Another person could say, no, that's not silly. So it's an opinion. And then old would be age. So they go in this order. It would go opinion first. So that would be silly. And then it would be age. So then old. And then you would do color. So that would be blue. So silly, old, blue. The silly, comma, old, comma, space after a comma always, old, comma, did I do it? Comma, space, blue. Oh, you know what? This is an interesting one because you wouldn't describe a driver as blue, would you? So we're actually going to be talking about the hat. So when you're doing your Google form, when you're doing these, make sure that you're using the adjectives with the correct noun. Because like on number one, like I said, you wouldn't normally describe a road as big and red. You know, we know that we're talking about the truck. The nouns in number two are driver and hat. We're not going to describe a driver as blue and silly. We might describe a driver as old, but more likely we're using these adjectives for one noun, and that it makes more sense for it to be hat, especially because we're saying blue. So the driver wore a, and then making sure I put them in the right order. So opinion first, need a space, silly, comma, space. And then we have the size, the age, and then the color. So wore a silly, old, comma, blue, no comma, hat. So if you were to put those in a different order, so if you said the driver wore a blue, old, silly hat, or the driver wore a old, silly, blue hat, it kind of makes sense, but generally we say silly, old, blue hat. Opinion, size, age, and then color, and then numbers come before all of those.